It's been a while since the last proper video. Thanks to everybody who made my Execute Order 66 showcase, my first video to break 1,000 views. That is really awesome. Also, thanks to everybody for getting me to 26 subscribers. That's pretty big for someone who had a single-digit subscriber count for most of the year. Let's hope that I can, get some of that success going with this new style content I'm doing. So I am starting a commentary video series that is pretty much to LEGO speedrunning what RecRap 1 is to Minecraft speedrunning. It's mainly going to focus on personal stuff like, stories from my life or just me talking about things related to my interests. Footage for right now is mainly just going to consist of LEGO Indiana Jones 2 stuff, because I'm trying to get my restricted hundo route down. I'll probably make it a bi-weekly or monthly release schedule since I'm super busy with college at the moment. The reason why I'm starting this series is because I'm just really burned out on unscripted gameplay videos, like with the Totally Normal LEGO Star Wars Free series. I just generally prefer pouring out what I want to talk about into a script instead of trying to, just let it come out of my mind naturally. Plus, I've been doing that for about, 3 years at this point, counting the old channel whose videos I ended up deleting. I need to do something different with my online stuff if I want to have fun doing it. Fittingly, this debut episode was actually first written back in around 2021, 2022, but I couldn't get around to doing it until now. So, 2019. Certainly one of the years of all time. I mean, that's a statement that more so applies to the following year, but whatever. I was at the age where I was going through puberty, and around that time, I was just collecting hyperfixations like they were Pokemon cards. For example, I was super into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which, along with my brief hyper-intensity special interest in Vaporwave, dovetailed into a ton of music-related hyperfixations, some of which I have to this day. Another thing I was getting super interested in was mecha anime. Stuff like Gundam, Transformers, the Brave series, if anybody here has ever heard of that, and much more. Around this time, I was also kind of a budding fanfic writer. I actually wrote my first piece of fanfic, and fiction in general, at 11. It was a Bendy and the Ink Machine fanfic, which was literally just a run through of the plot of the first few chapters, but with different protagonists. One of the works I was trying to pull off in 2019 actually included something that exists now, publicly. It's Shinjidai Sentai Kishinger is a Super Sentai fanfic. I'll have a link in the description if anybody wants to check that out. Other things I was working on at the time include a Pokemon fanfic, which is honestly deserving of its own video due to how deep its history goes, and multiple other attempts at fanfics, some in Sonic, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, just stuff that never panned out. And I also have this little thing going on called Devil's Moonlight, which was a work so incredibly derivative of JoJo's that in an earlier version of this script, I called it a complete and utter ripoff. Also, in the words of John Mulaney, I was so horny and angry all the time. All those factors led to me coming up with the debut iteration of the creative project I revisit the most. What was it called? Code semicolon 01. Yes, I put the semicolon in the title because I was unique, goddammit. Welcome to Frame Dependent Tales, everybody. So, Co semicolon 01, which I will be calling Coda 1 from now on because I'm not saying semicolon every time, it wasn't invented from whole cloth. It actually started with a Gundam inspired story, which was named Magnavox. Yes, after the first video game console. It took place on a battleship called the Elliptica, located in the outer reaches of the Milky Way. Basically, a bunch of middle schoolers have their astronaut school attacked by space pirates. They escape and end up stranded in the Elliptica, which has free mecha in store for the main characters to defend the ship with. The three major characters were called, and I shit you not, Dokushin Seiya, Simon Rockwell, and Katrina Waves. The reason Dokushin is named that is because I sucked at making meaningful Japanese names. The reason why the latter two are named after these one-hit wonders is because JoJo's. A lot of the things later on this video can be explained by just saying because JoJo's. I'll tell y'all why later on, but Dokushin was pretty much my self-insert. Simon was based off of a guy I knew in real life who I'm not naming here. And Katrina was based off of a former crush of mine who I'm also not going to name here. I should also note that there is a side character in the story that I named Red Durst. Like Fred Durst, but red. He turns out the edges of platforms now. Anyways, I probably intended for the mecha to look like a cross between Metal Armor Dragonar and Gundam. If you know the first one, congratulations! We have the same type of autism! Sadly, I never put anything related to this story down except for like a synopsis and some characters which got deleted because I overwrote them. I used to use the Notes app on my phone for like story notes and stuff, but you overwrite it, it's gone forever. No archives like with Google Docs. It's I have so many like stories that just got like BBC on Doctor Who in the 60s, if you're catching my drift. Something I forgot to put in the script, that I only just realized recording this, is that Magnavox also served as the jumping off point for another work of mine, which would eventually become like a Gundam fanfic series thing. I'll probably do like a video about that at some point because that does also have like kind of a long history. There are a few different versions of a story that just came between Magnavox and Kodo 1, but I'll just save the breakdown of those for the end as a treat to you guys for making it through the whole thing. Anyways, let's get to the plot. Before I start talking about the plot, I'm just going to have to say that this is really just a loose collection of different versions of a story, not like a solidified vision for the story. Like around this time, I was just like throwing stuff at the wall to see what works. So if I like say stuff like, well, depending on this plot element was different depending on the version. That's why. That's why I'm saying that. Our protagonist is named Virgin Silver. Yes, I actually named him that. He had various names as development went on, some more other than normal than others. There are usually mixes of Kenny, Ken, Silver, or Quicksilver. I will use Virgin because it's the funniest and it's also my favorite out of all of them. The plot starts with Virgin finding this thing called an Angel Stone in the street while coming home from school. Some random woman teleports behind him and whispers some cryptic shit to him before just dipping. Comes home and talks to his friend Steve, or Steven, depending on the version, Rockwell, and Katrina Waves on Discord, learning they also got Angel Stones. At some point, they discover that the Tarot Stones are able to summon things called Tarot Angels. What are Tarot Angels? Mecha that are probably the closest to the Braves from the aforementioned Brave series. Virgin's Angel, the Fool, either wields an off-brand Mega Buster or a flail depending on the version. Steve's Tarot Angel, the Chariot, wields a sword. I forgot what Katrina's Tarot Angel, the Empress, wields, But it doesn't really matter anyway, since she never had any standout moments in the first half of the story. They begin their battle against the crime organization Shinigami. I actually forgot what the name was, but it was pretty close to this, if it wasn't this. Why? Because Shinigami wants instrumentality to happen, apparently. That was, in fact, the reason that I put it down in the first drafts. Speaking of the first drafts, I actually don't have access to those. I only have the times I tried to polish the turd because I don't have the access to the school Google account with those versions anymore. Because I graduated. So as much as I'd love to produce receipts, you're going to have to take my word for most of this. Like, our golden trio are later joined by the stoic Anne Rhymes and the comic relief Joseph Cube. Anne's Hierophant was a sniper, and I genuinely forgot what Joe's magician had for a weapon. Uh, I mean, to be fair, the magician also is not that important. They encounter some rivals throughout their whatever their journey was, including Steve's brother Kevin and Heavy, the girl who killed Anne's father figure. I'll elaborate more on that later on. Anne's younger brother Lee gets the full hand down from Virgin in one of the later versions, who upgrades to Temperance. I don't know how or why he upgrades, since I'm pretty sure Temperance also just has a flail. I just guess it's stronger then. This first half of the story culminates in a battle between some dude named Siege Warcroft in his Wheel of Fortune and Silver in his Temperance. It ends with Warcroft defeated and Anne's brother rescued by Silver before being killed by Silver's true angel via hyperoremia. Hyper meaning high, aurum referring to the Latin name for gold, and emia meaning presence in blood. High gold, presence in blood. I will elaborate on everything in time. Just trust me, alright? Alright, I've had structure to talk about the characters right now since I started writing this script. Just didn't make sense for me to put anywhere else. So just hear me out, alright? So to start, something I want to say for context is that when I was in middle school, I was low-key kind of an incel. I had private tendencies towards resenting my female classmates, especially for how they dressed. I mean, I was also self aware enough to recognize that said resentment was stupid as all hell, which, recognizing the problem, goes a long way to solving it. Before I, go on oversharing my 13-year-old self's personal life, I should probably save a reason why I brought this up. And it was pretty much because it was the Virgin Silver mindset. Anyways, I don't know why I didn't write anything down related to it. I guess I was just like, either too ashamed of it. B, I was saving it for a chapter I never wrote, or C, I just could not write an inner monologue for just the life of me. At some point in the story, Virgin meets or obtains, depending on the version, a sentient mask named Agamemnon, named after the famous scary video Agamemnon counterpart. Agamemnon functioned as a sort of Svengali towards Virgin, using the latter's negative emotions and dreams of being a hero to slowly take control of them. I didn't mention this whole thing before because it was like a comparatively minor plot detail that only started holding water in the second half. Virgin also had a sister named Betty, who was easily the most changed character in the story. First off, I could not decide whether Betty was his younger or older sister. Second off, she had like 3 different fates depending on the version. The first of her fates was that she was killed in the prologue by Shinigami's members. I don't really think there was an in-universe explanation for that. I mean, of course, the Doyleist explanation was that it was intended to encourage Virgin to get his revenge. The second was that she was captured before the story and brainwashed to work for Shinigami. She would later be freed and become the pilot of the High Priestess. And the third is that she became Altao, the main mentor of the protagonist in some versions of the story. By the way, all three of these fates were not necessarily mutually exclusive. Like, elements of each of them just kind of, like, leaked into each other depending on the version. Anne had no parents and, an aforementioned brother. She had a father figure in the form of a librarian who died at Heavy's hands, probably by blowing up. Heavy herself was a bomb thrower and probably looks like that one, like, if you like this woman, you're secretly gay, like, manosphere thing. Anne's brother Lee was like so much of a visco girly that I almost made him gender nonconforming. 13-year-old me was almost kind of based. Simon's brother Kevin lost his girlfriend and made a deal with an eldritch beast, which at one point was the titular Code 01, to bring her back by killing his brother. It didn't pan out well, although I didn't finish that confrontation until I started doing the idea again in late 2020. These are the only characters I've dedicated a good amount of time to explaining, because they were the only ones that had any real, interesting character. Steve was pretty much the Chad 2 Virgin's virgin. Katrina existed to be Steve's girlfriend and Virgin's initial and then former crush. There was another character named Miyuki at various points who pretty much existed to be Virgin's adoring, feminine, dress-wearing Japanese girlfriend. She did not have any, like, story relevance at all, though she did have her own tarot angel, weirdly enough. Anne's personality was very aloof because I got that impression from her IRL self. And Joseph was the awkward comic relief, also because I got that impression from his IRL self. I genuinely don't think I could ever, in like a million years, recreate whatever the hell this cast composition was. Back to a story. Virgin and Anne have an epic fucking duel because, you know, Virgin accidentally killed her brother. They eventually make up, and then the whole gang just goes ahead to Shinigami's base to just wreck the absolute hell out of them. Something might have happened in between, but it was not important enough to remember. Anne dies in the attack while taking her rival Heavy down with her. Katrina discovers her true angel, which all you need to know about that right now is that it's basically just healing Flubber. Simon has a one-on-one with his brother and comes out victorious. Virgin defeats the leader of Shinigami, which I always visualize by listening to Core of the Crimson King by King Crimson. They then rescue Virgin's sister and have her fight with the High Priestess when that plotline was still in existence. Virgin also gets Stop Retina at this point of the story, either as a separate robot or as an expansion pack for his temperance, depending on the version. They learn on an eldritch abomination that holds the Angel Stone of the World, and at one point was named Dio. As mentioned in the character section, it was also the titular Code 01 at some point. Why was it the Code 01? I don't know, invent time travel if you want an answer. They prepare for a battle and fight in space. They win at the cost of Joseph's life. Then out of nowhere, Virgin gets the Angel Stone, Agamemnon fucking kills everybody except for Katrina and absorbs them and their power, and Agamemnon possesses Virgin's body. Then Virgin's evicted spirit suddenly appears and gives Katrina a new true angel to vibe check the shit out of Agamemnon. He probably gives her the true angel while I'm Free by Kenny Loggins is blasting in the background. It's a great song for a finale. After that, nothing, I guess. That's the end. Probably playing an epilogue, but I don't remember anything about it. I initially had a section comparing this to Onision's books written in the script. That makes some sort of sense because, they're both examples of creators putting a lot of personal stuff and just mixing it with whatever they thought was cool and just making that into a story. However, Coda 1 is much more pure than anything Onision has put his greasy hands on. It's not trying to get you to think, oh, the creator's thinly disguised avatar is totally one of the coolest people on Earth and he beats up all the bad guys and gets all the hoods. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. Virgin's flaws, such as his misogyny and everything else that allowed Agamemnon to take control of him, they were addressed as that. Flaws. Big I know. Uh, Anyways, on to the True Angels. So, you might have noticed some elements that I might have, cribbed from JoJo's, the tarot naming scheme for the main character's powers, the musical naming scheme used for some of the characters, you know, the fact that one of the antagonists was literally called Dio. Well, all the mentions of those, they were just foreshadowing for now. This was the ultimate act of thievery. I stole the stands. They were called True Angels here because we already had the Tarot Angels, which means I couldn't bite Araki's style even harder than I already had. Like, True Angels were a very, very rare power. Uh, Only like 3 or 4 characters had them. One of them was Virgin, who had the power of Risatu Stand Metallica, but with gold instead, because the element gold can be found in abundant amounts everywhere. I actually wrote that joke before researching for the hyperuremia one. And as it turns out, there's actually gold, like trace amounts of gold in people's blood, so who knows? Maybe he was just like yoinking every atom of gold he could out of passerby to create like the golden swag armor he'd use. Uh, the other true angel I can remember was Katrina's, who had basically healing flubber. She also got a second one, as I mentioned previously, which was pretty much Tusk Act 4 at home. It was also just called some shit like Seven Nation Army or something like that. I don't know. I think of a villain or two might have had a true angel, but like both three true angels are literally the only ones I ever remember. This was like genuinely the weakest element of a story because, outside of the big moments, the true angels are just not important anywhere else. Like, they could have been cut if it wasn't for the finale, okay? Something I also ended up forgetting, like, up until trying to figure out the footage I was going to use for this video, you know, back when this wasn't necessarily tied to, like, speedrunning and stuff, was that I made the characters from this series into custom characters in Lego Indiana Jones 2. This was around the time I was like getting back into the Lego games, especially LIJ2, so it makes some sense. I don't have any like photos of the characters nor of the levels I made in that game that vaguely represented the story. I think my LIJ2 homies would get a kick out of seeing what my 13-year-old self thought good level design was. Fun thing I found during writing, I have 2 different song parodies based around the series. One of them is based on Say It Ain't So by Weezer, and the other is based on Amish Paradise by Weird Al. Not Gangsta's Paradise, Amish Paradise. I did song parodies a lot in my early years as a creative. I'm pretty sure for that Pokemon fanfic I did a parody of American Pie for it. Too bad that one doesn't seem to have been archived. I say, like, I wasn't the one in charge of archiving them. Anyways, here are some highlights of my 13-year-old self's lyrical prowess. I have the full lyrics, but I really don't feel like subjecting you to them. I don't feel like singing them right now, so I'll just read them out. This is from the Say It Ain't So parody. Somebody's tarot is crowding my lockbox. Somebody's robot is taking my wills. guess I'll just go to sleep. Flip on the stone and fuse with the starling. Something is bothering right in my ass. The knuckles are ready to blow. And so, like, those are the notable lines from that parody. I just really think the bothering in my right in my ass line is just really funny. I don't know how I came up with that. Anyways, here's the Amish Paradise one, which is more embarrassing. Ahem. As I walk through a valley where I take out my pain, I take a look at my life and realize I've wasted my days, but that's just perfect for a teen like me. You know, I've shown filthy things like sakis and crocs. At 9:30 in the morning, I'm getting proud. Simon cuts the angels down and Josh lights out. Fool. And I've been blasted and enlightened so long that even Altal thinks my mind is gone. I'm a man of the hand, I'm into masturbating? What? Got a stone in my hand and a cut on my chin, but if I finish all my worlds and you finish fine, then tonight we're gonna party like it's 1999. I'm sorry, fucking my 13-year-old self just thought dropping a Jork in it reference was just like, yeah, good songwriting. Yeah, I'm not reading anything else from this. That it's just perfect. Although, like, I did just completely forget to write lyrics for a parody after the second verse, so it just turns into the Amish Paradise chorus, which I think is really funny. Now we get to the history all I've been waiting for. So, of course, you know, it was Magnavox first, then it became a Gundam fanfic called Gundam Temperance, which is where the Gundam Project and Kodo 1 split off. And so, Kodo 1 was kind of like in this weird state where it was like still the same story, but like I kept changing the name of it, so like the names it went under during that time included Star Terra Templar, Terra Temptation, 21st Century Spirits, and E-Spirits. Then it was a Kamen Rider fanfic called Kamen Rider E-Spirit, where Bet first appeared in all of her stuffed in the fridge glory. Then I tried to turn it into a Brave Series fanfic, where the actual story that would become Kodo 1 was first put down. Then it was Kodo 1, which, you know, we just talked about. Then I tried to turn it back into a Kamen Rider fanfic, but nothing came of that. Then I tried to turn it into an isekai series that, depending on the version, went under the name The Flowers of Long Past, Supernatural Sword, or Magic 100%. Then I tried to transplant the characters into another side work called 23-5, which also deserves its own video because it has its own breed of weirdness. Then I tried to transplant the characters into like a bunch of other works of mine. And then after, I tried to rewrite, I got back into trying to redo Kodo 1 back during like the pandemic. And then like shortly after that, I ended up making some new stories, which are honestly deserving of their own videos, purely due to how much stuff was in those for stories that just never got anywhere close to finish. You know, if you want to see any like videos about that or like the other unfinished works I've mentioned, then you know, you could hit me with a like, or you could comment what you thought about the video. If you like this sort of style content, then you can always just subscribe. Don't have like a solid end of year subscriber goal yet, but you know, I'll definitely come up with one as these go on. So yeah, you know, get yourself certified and notified by hitting that bell, and I will be seeing you sometime in the future.